At this point, the IC assesses that China is our most capable strategic competitor. Under the leadership of President Xi Jinping, the People's Republic of China seeks to position itself as a leading power on the world stage, economically, technologically, and militarily. Beijing is driven in part by a belief that Washington is pursuing a broad effort to contain China's rise and undermine CCP rule. China's most serious domestic challenge is probably China's slowing economy and potential instability if socioeconomic grievances lead to large-scale unrest. Growing economic tensions with the United States and other countries could also weigh on China's plans for economic growth and domestic job creation. China's military is fielding advanced capabilities, including hypersonic weapons, stealth aircraft, advanced submarines, stronger space and cyber warfare assets, and a larger arsenal of nuclear weapons. While it would like to develop and maintain positive ties with the United States and the Trump administration to advance its interests and avoid conflict, China is building its military capability in part to gain advantage in the event of a military conflict with the United States around the issue of China's efforts toward unification with the Republic of China, or Taiwan. China's military is also expanding its presence in the Asia-Pacific region with a focus on disputed territorial claims in both the East China and South China Seas. Beijing is advancing its cyber capabilities for sophisticated operations aimed at stealing sensitive U.S. government and private sector information and pre-positioning additional asymmetric attack options that may be deployed in a conflict. China's cyber activities have been linked to multiple high-profile breaches, including last year's massive compromise of U.S. telecom infrastructure, commonly referred to as Salt Typhoon. Beijing currently dominates global markets and strategically important supply chains, for example, with the mining and processing.
All right, so that is in Washington, D.C., where the Senate hearing of the U.S. intelligence chiefs, the U.S. Director of National Intelligence, along with heads of CIA, FBI, NSA, are currently testifying on intelligence on worldwide threats. The session comes just a day after news of a major security lapse made headlines and is still making waves. That is Tulsi Gabbard. Let's just understand what this testimony is all about. And joining us now on this broadcast is our correspondent from the United States, Susan Teherani, is live in New York. Susan, good to see you. What is Tulsi Gabbard testifying on, and what's the significance of this hearing?
A very significant hearing, really annually, that happens from the top brass of the intelligence community here in the United States. We're expected to hear threats from Russia. Tulsi Gabbard is talking about threats from China right now. She started just to outline what the greatest threat and perhaps the biggest issue on this intelligence community's mind is about the border, about the fentanyl crisis here in the United States, the drugs that are coming across the border as well. And then she went on, to talk about other threats as well. Worldwide threats of ISIS, trying to create a caliphate around the world. We just had a recent bombing in New Orleans on the first day of the year. She addressed that. But of course, as you mentioned, it just comes one day after that possible security breach from top brass in the Trump administration. There's no doubt that these individuals are going to be grilled on that as well as we watch.
All right, we'll have to wait and see how this pans out. Susan Teherani, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for talking to us, and it's good to see you.
Thanks, Eric.
In just over 2 months of the new administration taking over, America has witnessed an unprecedented security lapse. It was not an external job. Senior-most leaders of the Trump administration inadvertently leaked classified information to a journalist. The incident has raked up a storm. On Monday night, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic published an article that within hours became the biggest story. Jeffrey Goldberg wrote a detailed piece on how the Trump administration added him to a group on Messenger app, Signal, and shared detailed war plans for strikes on Yemen's Houthis. Goldberg went on to elaborate how he knew about the March 15th strikes in Yemen. This after U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth sent details of the war plan, including information on targets, the timing of the strikes, and ammunition used. The group on Signal, where Goldberg was added, was called Houthi PC Small Group. The chart included several high-profile leaders, including Vice President J.D. Vance, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, CIA Director John Radcliffe, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and several other senior National Security Council officials. But Hegseth has refuted the report. Moreover, the Defense Secretary lashed out at the Atlantic editor-in-chief, calling him a discredited journalist. This is what he said.
Your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic, and were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
But Hegseth and National Security Advisor Tim Walz are facing heat from both political camps, especially the Democrats.
On this text chain, conversations went at length about imminent military operations, including specific targets, weapons, and attack plans. These text messages very likely included classified U.S. intelligence. And the entire time, nobody seemed to realize that a private citizen without security clearance had access to this conversation. Mr. President, this is one of the most stunning breaches of military intelligence I have read about in a very, very long time.
Congressional lawmakers are demanding an investigation into the lapse. And according to reports, the incident is slated to become a major topic of discussion later in the day when leadership of U.S. intelligence agencies appear before the Senate Intelligence Committee to testify about global security threats. And that is currently happening because Tulsi Gabbard is currently addressing the Senate. While the war chart leak has become a major political and national security issue, the U.S. president said he was unaware of it. Hours after the Atlantic article became public and reactions started to pour in. Addressing questions by a reporter, Trump said he knew nothing about the incident but took the opportunity instead to discredit the Atlantic.
Mr. President, your reaction to the story in The Atlantic that said that some of your top cabinet officials and aides had been discussing very sensitive material through Signal and included an Atlantic reporter for that. What is your response to that?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
Several questions have been raised on the credibility of the administration's senior-most leadership after a high-risk fork spar. Conversations of the leak also revolve around how use of a messenger application to convey classified information breaks the law. It now remains to be seen if the U.S. president will take corrective action against the very people he nominated to his cabinet. Well, let's talk about this breach in the United States. Christopher Hale is a political analyst. He has worked for President Obama and Biden in the White House and on the campaign trail. Hale is now joining us live on this broadcast. It's good to see you, Christopher Hale. What do you think, or how do you think President Trump is going to get himself out of this hot mess? Because Hegseth, Trump, and some of his senior members have discredited Atlantic.
You know, it's interesting. Anyone who is accountable to the public, notably the elected vice president, the elected Speaker of the House, both elected by the American people, have not discredited. In fact, said a mistake was made and corrective actions will be taken. Even the White House itself has given mixed messages saying that they'll look at the processes, but Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, has also tried to discredit the report. Here's the reality. The Republican lawmakers on the Hill are not happy. The Republican Speaker of the House is not happy. And a significant amount, from what I can tell, of the president's base themselves are not happy. So I do think heads will roll. I think it's most likely going to be Michael Waltz. We saw reporting last night in Politico that they were considering to make him the fall guy. And to be quite frank, he was the one who added the reporter to the thread. So it makes sense that he would be the one who goes down for this. But I don't think they can ignore it. You've seen mixed messaging from the White House on this, but I think the president can count to 10, and he realizes that he's up against the wall here. If you cut Waltz, this is a one-day story. If you keep Waltz on, I think this can continue falling out. And remember, Democrats take control of the House likely, I think, in 2026, and they won't forget about this.
They won't forget about it indeed. Right now, there is a hearing going on at the Senate in the United States in Washington, D.C. Do you think Trump will accept the recommendations being made by the senators? And do you also think that the senators will put these cabinet members to task?
I think so. I think we have to remember that Roger Wicker, who is in the House or on the Senate Armed Services Committee, really took a bullet, if you will, politically to push Hegseth through. He had a lot of concerns. Joni Ernst had a lot of concerns. I think the reality of it is that the administration's on a short leash because a lot of the cabinet picks were non-traditional, and my party argues, I think correctly, that a lot of them were not qualified. And I think the fear that we communicated is juvenile behavior like this could come forth from it. So I think let's get back to the reality. They were discussing. We can fight about what a war plan is. They were discussing U.S. military strikes overseas, the logistics of it, via a commercial messaging app. So I think that there will be corrective actions having to be taken. I think the most likely scenario is the Senate will want some head to roll. And I think Michael Waltz is the likely choice once again. But I can't imagine that they won't ask for something in exchange for this.
All right, there's a lot to talk about, but Christopher Hale, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you for having me.
Germany's parliament has convened for its first session after elections last month, and there are many firsts this time. Far-right AfD party is returning to parliament as the official opposition party. The AfD has doubled its representation after doubling its seats during the February 23rd election. The far-right party now has 152 lawmakers in the lower house. AfD leader Alice Weidel now sits in parliament as a leader of opposition after years of the party being sidelined of its ideology. Weidel has been credited for her role in the party's success in becoming a mainstream parliamentary representative again. Now, according to reports, the far-right party is eyeing several key positions in parliament and other institutions. The AfD wants to nominate a vice president of the parliament as well as the presidents of several committees. The party is also demanding representation on a parliamentary body responsible for overseeing Germany's intelligence services. Meanwhile, coalition talks are still ongoing between the Christian Democratic Union and their outgoing Social Democratic Party. Chancellor-in-waiting Friedrich Merz has hinted at formalizing government formation by Easter, which is on April 20th. The two parties have already joined forces in tabling and voting in favor of a massive debt overhaul to boost defense expenditure earlier this month. Trent Murray is our correspondent in Germany. He's now joining us live from Berlin. Trent, good to see you. So much has happened in Germany. AfD has returned to the lower house as the main opposition party, and there's still talk of a merger between the SPD and the outgoing party in Germany. Probably you can give us up to date on the latest developments in Germany.
Yeah, that's right. 630 members of the German Bundestag taking to their seats today for that new parliament. 230 of them are new MPs. But it is a very different looking parliament to the one that we saw just last week, the one that was under former Chancellor Olaf Scholz. It retired last Thursday. A very different looking parliament right now, with the AfD, as you rightly say, taking up 152 seats. They are now a major force in German politics. They are now the official opposition, and with that does come a number of benefits. Those additional seats means they will get extra public money in order to conduct their political affairs. They will have the first right of reply to the Chancellor in the equivalent of Prime Minister's questions here, and also they will have huge voting power on some of those key committees, everything from the economy to national security. They are eyeing a number of seats. It will be a very interesting time in German politics moving forward, and very much under the stewardship, I should say, of what looks to be incoming Chancellor Friedrich Merz. He is still trying to piece together this grand coalition with his political opponents, the Social Democrats. We understand those discussions are still underway right now, everything from what will be government policy to which ministers will get which portfolio. As I say, he has set a deadline of Easter, April 20, that, like you rightly said, but big shifts underway here in Europe's biggest economy. We understand in the next hour or so, the outgoing Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, will visit the president of this country, where he will be given his letter of dismissal. It's an important tradition here, signalling the end of his government. He will then go into a caretaker mode until his likely successor, 69-year-old Friedrich Merz, a Conservative, can take up residence at the Chancellery.
Trent Murray, we'll have to leave it there. It's good to see you. Thank you for talking to us today. Trouble for Shakib Al-Hassan seems to be growing. A Bangladeshi court ordered the seizure of Hassan's assets in the latest legal headache for former Bangladesh cricket captain. Shakib is a former lawmaker from the party of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who was overthrown in a student-led uprising last year and fled to neighboring India. His links to Hasina has made him a target of public anger, and he was among dozens facing murder investigations for a deadly police crackdown on protesters during the uprising. He has not been charged over those allegations, but is currently being prosecuted on fraud charges for allegedly bouncing checks totaling more than $300,000. A magistrate in the capital, Dhaka, ordered the seizure of his assets on Monday, after a warrant for Shakib's arrest was issued by the court in January. Shakib was playing in a domestic 2020 cricket competition in Canada when Hasina's government collapsed and has not returned to Bangladesh since. The left-arm all-rounder has played 71 tests, 247 one-day internationals and 129 2020s for Bangladesh, taking a combined 712 wickets. Serbia is witnessing simultaneous protests relating to multiple issues, from months-long anti-government rallies to outrage over US President Donald Trump's son-in-law Kushner's development projects, combined with anger over 1999 bombing campaign by NATO. Now, thousands gathered in Belgrade to commemorate the anniversary of the NATO bombing campaign of 1999, when NATO troops led by the United States carried out a 78-day bombing of Yugoslavia that killed and injured over 8,000 innocent civilians. Serbian people, or Serbians, marked March 24th as NATO Aggression Remembrance Day since 2015. The public anger was also directed towards US President's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who was handed a contract to renovate headquarters of the former Yugoslav People's Army. A 99-year lease deal was given to Kushner's US-based investment firm, Affinity Global Development, last year. The rallies are part of an ongoing anti-graft movement in Serbia. They were triggered by a canopy collapse at a train station that killed 16 people. Months-long delay demonstrations or daily demonstrations in Serbia reflect wider discontent with over the decade-long rule of President Aleksandar Vučić, who is a supporter of US President Donald Trump. India's parliament today discussed the finance bill as proposed by the union government. After a back and forth on certain provisions, India's lower house of parliament passed the bill with 35 amendments. India's finance minister Nirmala Sitharaman defended the new tax regime under 2025 budget. The new tax regime exempts income tax for income of up to 12 lakh rupees. She also claimed that the exemption will boost domestic production and enhance export competitiveness. But as a session that convened essentially to discuss the finance bill ended up being rattled by a host of other issues that have taken the spotlight. Top of this list was recovery of cash at the residence of Delhi High Court judge that kicked off an uproar in Parliament. The issue of extension of the tenure of Joint Parliamentary Committee on One Nation, One Election also resounded during the proceedings. One Nation, One Election is BJP-led union government's flagship poll promise to reform India's electoral system. One Nation, One Election bill proposes to hold simultaneous elections for Lok Sabha as well as state assemblies. The bill is under discussion in Joint Parliamentary Committee. The opposition argues that the proposal will undermine India's federal structure. The other point of discussion was recovery of cash at Delhi High Court Judge Justice Yashwant Varma's residence. Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar held a meeting with BJP leader JP Nadda and leader of opposition Mallikarjun Kharge. In an earlier meeting, Dhankar welcomed Chief Justice of India Sanjeev Khanna's decision to put the inquiry report in public domain and requested that Parliament awaits the CJI-appointed inquiry committee's findings. Meanwhile, the legislature for Delhi also convened in New Delhi today for the budget. The newly elected BJP state government presented the budget for the national capital for the first time after 27 years out of power. And that's the latest on this episode of Race to Power on WION The World is One. Thank you for watching.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Busting the myths around tokenization. Catch me on Token Money Magnet, only on WION.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.